Hello, I'm Frank McLaughlin from McLaughlin Lofts. In this video, I will show you how to educate your youngsters. Most people like to say train the young birds, but if you don't educate them first, you have no chance of major success. Now, what I'd like to start with, when I talk about educating the youngsters, you are the coach. You're the coach of your team. If your team doesn't know how to play the game, you're not going to have success. Give me a team that knows how to play the game. They're going to beat the team that is less experienced with the game, but maybe highly conditioned. So for starters, you must give your youngsters the tools so they can win. Without the proper tools, they really don't have any chance. Many start out, I know I've been watching the same experienced fanciers for years. They start early, they start training their birds months before the young bird season. They're training them 50, 60, 70 miles every other day. One direction, the birds come out and they go home. They're not learning anything. They're not educating the pigeons. Road training them for weeks and weeks before the first race is useless. I mean, you burn a lot of gas. If winning with pigeons was determined by how much you took them down the road for training, then I would never win a race in my entire career because I do as little as humanly possible to get the pigeons in position to win. I don't burn up the road, I don't overtrain, but let's get back to that. We're going to talk about educating the pigeons. So for starters, I would recommend get them out young, get them flying, get them flock flying. When they're flying in a flock, now it's time to start the training. When a youngster, say a wild bird, a wild pigeon falls out of the nest, in the next few days it has to learn how to find its food, find its water, find its roost. It learns a lot in that window while it is very young. So my recommendation would be get your birds out young, get them flying, and when they're flocking and flying maybe half an hour around the loft, it's time to start training. It's better to start early and go slow, picking your days, picking the days that are cool, than to wait, let them route for months, and then try to train them through the heat of the summer. So here is how I would start. You want to train all directions. You want to go slow, maybe half mile north, half mile south, east, west, mile all directions, 2 miles all directions. If your birds come home and come in and they look good, give them a handful of feed, wait 15 minutes, maybe take them 2 or 3 times in the same day. Even if they flew 20, 25 minutes, you take them back out for another short toss, won't hurt them at all. So start early and start slow, go all directions. Many fanciers like to go down the race course, pretty useless. When those pigeons tend to get off the course or they end up in a place where they don't belong, they just can't use their homing instinct to figure out which way to go, to figure out how to go home. You want your pigeons to be confident with their homing instinct and use it from no matter where they're liberated. They come out, they use their homing instinct, they come home. Pretty simple. Now, before you even start training, pigeons, the first time in the crate, the first time in a car, they get car sick. I'm not sure if you people have witnessed a bird getting car sick, but put your youngsters in a crate, drive them around for 15, 20 minutes. You'll notice that they're up chucking in the crates, they get nauseous, they get motion sickness. I guess it's more motion sickness than car sickness. Bring them back, sit them in the yard, let them settle for 10 minutes, and then let them go right in front of the pigeon lofts. That's the first toss. That is the first toss, the first experience with the crates. I've seen many fanciers, they chase them around, they jam them into the crates. The birds have never been in the crate before. They throw them in the car, they've never been in the car before. They drive out, they liberate the birds are in a panic, they're in a frenzy. A disaster training toss can happen. So take it slow, start early. Don't rush. Now, when I mean start early, I'm also not saying burn up the road. Like start early, pick your days, train them, educate them, all directions. That's the start. Once you get them out about 25, 30 miles, hopefully in all directions, if possible, now's the time to start mixing them. Mixing them is probably the most important aspect of teaching pigeons. The most important thing you can do with your pigeons is teach them to break. They must break from other pigeons to be successful in racing. Now, years ago, like say in Belgium, when I first started to visit Belgium, back in the 80s, we visited Armand Shears. There were 40 fanciers on his street. Yes, 40 fanciers. They would let their birds out, the flocks would join, they'd separate, they'd join, they'd split. The birds were breaking from other flocks every day of their lives. Now we're all spread out, we're all over the US, we're all, there might be 5 members in a club, and they're all 15, 20 miles from each other. The birds never mix. You have to plan to mix. Now, people get uncomfortable, they think, oh, my birds are gonna get sick or whatever. You have to mix them. And when you mix them, the first few times, it doesn't necessarily go well. All your birds might go to your neighbor, his birds might come to your house, you get discouraged. They might take hours, they might not do much of anything but circle. It's a learning experience. You must mix them. My suggestion would be to find a fancier maybe 20 miles north or south of you and be able to train the birds so they have to come and they have to split. Now the first few tosses, again, may not go smooth, but after 7 or 8 times, if you're both flying 35 miles, the birds will both fly it in 40 minutes, so they're breaking. Me personally, I have a training truck about 35 miles, 40 miles south of me. So I'll take my birds and put them on the training truck, and my pigeons are the only birds going to the north. Well, the first couple of tosses, my birds are like 30 minutes behind the birds going to the south. They're going into the south and then they're coming home. And then after 3 or 4 times, some of them are doing pretty decent time. After 5 or 6 times, my birds are flying the exact same speed as the birds in the south. So at some point, say on a 60, 70 mile toss, they're breaking. Now, where they're breaking, I'm not sure, but they must be breaking pretty far out for them to make the same speeds. So again, if you don't teach them to break, they're not gonna break. You can't be burning the road up, going down the road 60 miles, letting your flock go by themselves over and over, straight line home. Doesn't really teach them anything, because as soon as they get with a flock, they're gonna run into trouble. So that's a suggestion if you have a training truck, if you have another fancier. If you don't have someone you can liberate with, say you don't have somebody that it works where the pigeons have to split on the way home, meet in the middle. Find a fancier 40 miles from you. You go 20 miles, he goes 20 miles. Birds, even if it's not the correct direction of the race course, it doesn't matter. Don't go crazy over the direction of the race course. Teach them to break. Meet in the middle, you let your 40 youngsters go with his 40 youngsters, they circle, one group is going north, one group is going south. The first time, some might go to the other loft. They may circle for an hour, but after 5, 6, 7 times, you let those 2 flocks go, they'll join, and they'll split, and they'll head home. The advantage to that is when you're racing, your pigeons will get in the habit of jumping in the first flock that's leaving the liberation. So if they know that bunch, hey, that group is going home, they're in, they're gone. They're jumping in. Whereas a lot of the stiffs, they're just flying and they're waiting for the whole group to leave. So pigeons that learn to break, pigeons that have been trained to break, educated to break, are the ones that are gonna do the best. Next thing that I would suggest is to train your birds in adverse weather conditions. Now, if there's a high ceiling, and it's gray and overcast, take your birds on a short toss. If it's raining, again, but there's good visibility, train the birds. If you want them to fly into headwinds, take them the opposite direction. Let them fly into headwinds. Let them fly with the wind on the nose. Birds love flying with tailwinds. Most of the race courses are tailwind courses. Let your birds fly in headwinds. Don't be afraid of adverse conditions. If the weather is nasty and foggy, let them out to fly. Let them see it. Let them experience it. When I lived in Oregon, I started training a team of latebreds. The fall came, the weather got relatively nasty, and I said, well, what can I do? I had to train the birds, and I had them coming through all kinds of bad weather. It's amazing what they will adapt to. So again, they have to see it. They have to experience it to be able to navigate in it. And again, don't be crazy. Don't take them on a 70-mile toss in a storm. Or, I mean, I'm talking days where there's good visibility, but yet you know the type of days. Heavy overcast, but high ceiling, good visibility is the really way to go. You're educating them. They need the experience. Like anything else, the team needs the experience. You're the coach. So when they run into this situation, they can deal with it. Now let's talk rest. Now I recommend starting far enough out from the season, whereas you're more concerned with educating the birds than trying to condition the birds. There's many old-time fanciers, they start months before the race season and they're running the birds down the road 50, 60, 70 miles, 4 or 5 times a week. Again, what for? I mean, what are the birds getting out of that? It's pretty well useless. Again, you may want to ramp it up a couple weeks before the race season, but there's no need to ramp it up before that. Training, we start racing in the middle to end of August. There's fanciers that start training their birds at the end of June and keep them pumping day after day down the road all the way to August. Usually they do well about the first 2 or 3 races of the season, and then they're finished. So, excuse me, my thoughts, you'd want to do better at the end. Train the birds. Be careful of the heat of the summer. If anything, if you can get them out in the springtime, 35 miles, train them all directions, get them mixed a little bit, shut them down this summer, and then start them up maybe 3 weeks before the race season. Let the competitors burn their babies up in the heat, lose them in the humidity. No need. I mean, the big races are always at the end of the season, so focus on the end of the season. I know being a new fancier, people get very excited about week 1, but I use week 1, 2, and even 3 as training and experience. That's all it is to me. The money races and the important races are at the end of the season. So if you can get out of that mode to win the very first week, you're going to have a long and successful season. The other thing to consider is rest. For years, I try to quantify rest, and I suggest resting 1 day for every 2 hours on the wing. So if your birds have a good flight, they fly a couple hours, the next day they don't leave the loft. Total rest. They fly 4 hours, total rest for 2 days. This is how you can keep your pigeons fresh throughout the season. They fly a 4, 5, 6 hour race. They might have 2, 3 days of total rest before they're back out and exercising again. Very important. I will do a video and I'll break down my training, how much I train, when I train, and how I feed. But that'll be coming soon. If you like my videos, hopefully you can subscribe and tell your friends. I would suggest get your babies out, start training them young, train in all directions, get them mixed. You want them to learn how to break. Don't be afraid of mixing them because of health issues. I mean, if they're going to have some type of young bird sickness, better to deal with it early in the season than once the race season starts. Pick your days, pick the better days, don't take chances, don't train in the heat, there's no need. If anything, train them early, lay them up, rest them through the heat, and then start again before the season. Feed once a day. That's all they need. I usually will mix in barley, and if they start leaving some barley, they've had plenty. They tend to train us. They act like they're starving when they're really not. I will get into feeding. I'll do a video on feeding for the race season, which will be a little more intricate, and it'll help you. If you feed them right, you don't have to train them that much, and they perform really well. This is Frank McLaughlin from McLaughlin Lofts. I hope you subscribe and like my videos. Thank you.